Everything about this life, it's all about your perspective. So when you're presented with different challenges, different experiences that are meant to scar you, it's an opportunity for you to shift your perspective and allow it to drive you into the direction where you need to go. And we hear a lot of people saying that rejection is redirection, or rejection is protection. That's another thing too. And so when you shift your perspective in this way, it allows you to continue to move ahead, without being stuck in the past or dwelling on past hurts. A lot of times we don't fulfill our potential because we're still trapped in that cycle of going back to the past and reliving it and we're literally asking ourselves the wrong questions. We're asking, why don't they love me? Why didn't they accept me? Why did they do this to me? Why did he or she betray me? Why all this why in regards to seeking approval and acceptance from those that never loved you in the first place? It makes no sense to question those questions. Like I said, you're asking the wrong questions. Those questions, even if you were to find an answer to it, you're still not going to be healed, and it's not going to repair anything, and it's not going to really move you into any, direction that, it's not going to allow you to grow. Basically, you're going to still be trapped, and it's worse because you may not even find the answers to those questions. And even if you do, the answers are absolutely irrelevant, because how they feel or how they think about you should not be the center of your world. So we have to shift our perspective on rejection. Now, this video is inspired by somebody who left an amazing comment. I really appreciate all the new people coming into the channel, as well as the people from day one and everything. It's nice to see that there are like-minded individuals out there, so this is a great thing. Now, in the comment, she said something about how high frequency individuals are treated differently and ostracized in this world, and how that's not always a bad thing. And it's not. And it goes back to how I started off the video, is that it's all about how you view rejection and how you perceive it, how you perceive being treated a certain way. And I'm going to say this, at least in my life, and maybe you thought the same thing, is that you might have wondered, like, what is this silent hate? This, like, people not liking you for no reason, because I've experienced that. People just disliking you and you didn't do anything to these people. Sometimes you could just walk past someone and it's like they just feel your presence is making them feel uncomfortable for some reason, and you don't know why. And I've noticed this in my life pretty much most of my life, like, but when this is like, before we wake up to who we are and really understand our purpose in this life, before all of that, you're gonna realize that some of these people, they already knew who we were before we did. But the difference is that instead of admiration, in the beginning, it's not really admiration, it's more like hatred, disdain, and jealousy. Yes, because your light, it's undeniable. That's why they try to suppress it. They try to dim your light, and from the very beginning, and you probably come from a hopeless place just like me. And so that kind of, having that kind of light and not being aware of it, it's going to attract a lot of envy and hatred, and that's why sometimes people hate you for no reason. They'll try to play with your head and really make you think that you're not who you are. They try to really make you believe that you're not who you actually are. They're basically gaslighting you out of your own identity, and that right there, that's it's a lot. It's a challenge, but going back to this thing, I realized that a lot of the, as you get older, you realize that, the more you learn about yourself, you start to understand why you receive the reactions that you do, and the so-called treatment, why you receive the treatment that you do in some cases. And a lot of times, for a lot of you guys that, a lot of high frequency individuals, they're going to encounter, we're going to encounter a lot of rejection, and a lot of silent hate, where you could just sense it. When you're spiritually in tune, right, you can feel the energy of others. So when you walk past, you can feel the silent hate. You can just sense this person really doesn't like you. And logically, there's no reason to, you know? But then you have to think to yourself, maybe there is a reason, but the reason isn't because of what you did, it's what you represent. You know, your existence itself represents something that is lacking in them, or something that, you know, makes them feel uncomfortable because they feel like you're outshining them, and they know you are, because when you're a high frequency individual, you're gonna shine. That's just what it is. You were born with that. You were born gifted, and they notice that, and they can feel it in your presence, and that's why they act the way they do. And so when you shift your perspective on this, instead of feeling bad about, oh my God, they don't like me, instead of feeling bad about people rejecting you, people not liking you, you have to embrace being who you are authentically. Even if that means you're a loner, you're an outcast, so what? Because I'll be honest with you, in my life, a lot of my experiences from the beginning, it prepared me for my purpose and my path that I have right now. Because you have to have a very, you know, sovereign, maintaining sovereignty requires a lot of strength and independence, you know. And by independence, I mean that you cannot be a follower of society's broken ideologies, you know. See, you have to think for yourself. That's an important thing as well. And you're going to encounter so many different institutions, mindsets, ideologies, so-called circles, you know, social circle, whatever it is. There's so many different kinds of individuals you're going to find yourself around. But I noticed that when you're a high frequency individual, it puts you in a very unique position where a lot of people don't understand you, you know. And looking back at my experiences, I realized that in some cases there have been people that dislike me for no reason, but then I realized the reason is because of what I represent. And it's the same thing with you guys out there, who like-minded individuals. You know, the reason is the fact that we represent a mindset. You know, we represent a frequency that's so high that most people can't reach it. Therefore, they can't understand our language. And when we talk, and the way that we see things is vastly different than the majority. It's literally outside of the so-called, you know, worldly, material world. You find true spiritual empowerment when you detach from this earthly realm. And what I mean by that is that you don't allow society's broken ideologies to move you, to have the power, or to have the power to control the way you see yourself and the way that you feel, you know. Because see, they like to alter our emotional and mental state. That's why they do what they do, all these little agendas that they have going on, right? Everything is meant to bend your mind, is meant to feed into this so-called fake reality that they created. These conversations most people don't understand, you know, and that's why you have to really have discernment when it comes to meeting people, right? You have to make sure that, you know, this person really understands these kind of things, because it can easily be misunderstood. Because there's people that are really like, some people are locked in the matrix, and when you're locked in the matrix, you can't really understand concepts that are beyond this realm, concepts that, you know, you have to have a certain level of consciousness. And sometimes when you express yourself in this way around the wrong people, it's going to create a lot of rejection, and you're going to be ostracized. Because one of the biggest ways they ostracize you is they like to call people like us skits, right? You know the whole word. I can't say it. I don't know how YouTube is with the algorithm with certain words, but yeah, they'll think you're skits. In other words, they'll think you're clinically crazy, because you see the world in a vastly different way, you know, in a way that actually, you know, if we were to allow iron to sharpen iron, you know, and nurture each other's perspectives, continuously grow in this way, you're going to see that it's going to increase our voice, and it's going to actually allow us to not only feel validated that other people understand this, but it's going to awaken more inside of us, right? Because that's what the power of fellowshipping is. Fellowshipping is like-minded individuals that are seeking the truth, you know. But see, there's so much like there's so much information overload online that it can get very confusing, right? But eventually you reach a certain point, and what resonates with you, that's part of your path. And then sometimes you might let go of something and then move on to the next phase, move on to a different, you might have a shift in perspective over time. That's just growth, you know. But some of us, we grow at an astronomical rate at times, you know, especially when you're an old soul. And if you spend a considerable amount of time on your own and using your time in solitude wisely, you're going to find yourself on a whole nother level. And then to the point you start sharing your thoughts by making content like this, you know, and then you start to build, you know, you start to meet like-minded people online. Usually it's online, because offline seems like the people in our vicinity, they're gone for the most part, you know. You can't have conversations like this. Imagine going to a coffee shop and I just start like how I start these videos, right? I just start talking to someone about something, higher consciousness and all this. They're gonna be like, who the hell is this? But no, seriously, a lot of you guys are very amazing people. It's the fact that you have to look at the state of the world that we're in. I mean, the world is a very low vibrational realm. You know, it's the closest thing to hell. If anything, you know, hell ain't too far from here. That's why they say, you know, Earth is parallel to hell, right? And, you know, we've heard that line before. You know, that's why they say that, because it's not, I mean, it really is. Like, everything about this realm is promoting low vibrational thought. You know, but here we are ascending spiritually and elevating our minds in such a way that the people around us can't understand. You know, I look at it like this. How about, this is a good way to describe it, is every animal has their own purpose. And so whatever energy is in the atmosphere, the animals move accordingly, because animals are in tune with the natural world. The problem is that most so-called modern humans, they're not in tune with nature. They're not in tune with the universe. I mean, at all. Like, they're very much sucked into the matrix. They live for the matrix. They work for the matrix. You know, so therefore they have a hard time detaching from this so-called world. And so when you try to tell them about detachment, the importance of it, and how empowering it is, you know, for your sovereignty and for you overall as a spiritual being, they're not going to understand that. They're going to say, what the hell are you talking about? I got to go to work. I mean, you're making me late, you know. That's, you know, because again, they're stuck in that and even if they're off work, I mean, when they're still not going to understand. They're going to want to go home and watch their mindless TV shows that really don't do anything for you. I can't even watch TV like that. I mean, maybe there's a good show, maybe a good movie, but personally, I don't really like watching movies too much. It has to really be a good movie for me to watch it, you know? Most people are very attached to the matrix, the system, and so, you know, their mind is literally distracted. Like, there's 100 million distractions every day, all day of the week, and it's like they literally turned into a mindless drone. And so you try to talk to them about this stuff, they're not going to get it. And that's why you have to really practice discernment. And we're unlocking so much knowledge that most people really don't understand. They don't care to understand it, because their whole life is centered around money, status, you know, what do people like to say? That's not going to pay the bills. Like, their mind is literally stuck on bills. Like, that's all you think about. You can't think about nothing outside of that. If you were to think outside of that, bills will no longer be a problem eventually. If you really think about it, if you tap into your gifts and you know, you don't worry about certain things, and then, you know, you find out how to come up with a strategy on how to allow, you know, money to be attracted to you, or blessings. You know, and a lot of times some of these blessings, they may not always come in the form of finances, but eventually it can. Eventually it can be financial. And it's even better that way, because you put yourself in a position where you attract these things rather than chasing it. You know, see, the people that are stuck in the matrix, they're chasing wealth, they're chasing money and validation and, oh, my title, my status, you know, but we don't give a fuck about that. So when you're a high frequency individual, you don't care about that shit. You only care about you being authentically you. And so, of course, you're going to be ostracized. Absolutely. You're going to be outcasted by almost everyone, you know, no matter where you go. And that's not a bad thing. A lot of times in the beginning, you know, some of us might have asked, you know, like I said, going back to what I said earlier, we used to ask the wrong questions, you know. Oh, why don't they like me? What did I do wrong? You didn't do anything wrong. And I'm talking to the people that actually didn't do anything wrong. Like, you didn't actually wrong this person. Your presence alone and what you represent is what irritates them, because they see and feel an energy in you that is different than what they're used to. So basically, in other words, you're a glitch in the matrix, and the people that are attached to the matrix, they see that as a threat. You know, they see you as like a virus, but really you're not a virus. You're actually a healing entity. You know, you've come to heal, but they're not familiar with that. They're not familiar with that energy of healing. So they look at it as a threat because they can't understand it, because they're so used to being in a low frequency that when they encounter a high frequency individual, they're like, oh yeah, that's the problem right there. Because why? Because you're set apart, because you're different, and people fear the unknown. And when they don't know who you are, but they could sense this powerful energy, the first thing they're going to think is, yeah, that person's up to no good. That person's a troublemaker. That person is definitely a threat. And then they're going to try to eradicate you. And that's the reason why a lot of chosen ones, they get targeted like that. You know, ever since the beginning of our life, we've been through some very trippy things, you know. And it's just like, you look back at it and you're just amazed. You know, it's amazing. It is beautiful, right? And then the fact that you're still here and you're able to be yourself. There's nothing greater than true freedom. The freedom to be who you are, to express yourself. And whoever doesn't like it, who cares? If you're living in truth, if you're living your purpose, if you have God with you, and you increase your divine protection by, you know, keeping God's laws in mind and respecting divine order, you really have nothing to worry about, because you're in alignment with the Most High. And that's really what matters. But see, in the beginning, you haven't yet detached from this world. You know, that fear comes from the fact that you're still, part of you is still attached to this world. That's why you have to detach completely, because so that way, whatever happens, you don't care, because you know, your sense of value comes from within. And I know people say that a lot, but they don't really live by it, and they don't really understand how deep that is. But no, your value is within, meaning that if that person hates me for whatever reason, right, which it could be like I always say, it's usually for no reason. But if they hate me, I don't care. You're coming in with a different energy. And some of us, we have very powerful energy, you know, and you create this spiritual support system just like this. And it actually, like I said, people are being healed. You know, you could be living across the water and you're being healed because you see and you hear that, wow, this person literally broke it down perfectly. And now you have this, it's just a sense of comfort in knowing that someone understands you, that you're, you know, that validates your experiences, and it destroys and dismantles the so-called lies that have been said about us, including the parts when they try to say that we're crazy or that we're not good people and stuff. Because a lot of these covert narcissists, they like to run with that, oh, that person's crazy, that person's aggressive, that person is this. But in reality, once you break down all these different, you know, experiences that we share, you know, and all of this stuff, I mean, people get validated. They're like, that's exactly what it was. You were called to do certain things, right? You were called, basically you have a higher calling, and you have certain tasks that need to be accomplished before you leave the earth. And it's not your fault that you have this and you accepted the calling, because not only was it given to you, but you accepted it. But it's crazy because in my case, for as much as I tried to reject my own calling and just say, man, just leave me alone, right? It would always find me somehow. And you look back at your life and your past experiences and you realize that, wow, like, you're pretty much the best person to do it, because your stories and your experiences and all the insight that came from that has the power to heal people. It's such a way, in such a high magnitude, that it's just going to bring so much. It's going to literally elevate a lot of people out there, so it's just that it just so happens that it's not going to happen within your vicinity. And that's why we have to move our, go to a different environment and stuff, but it's not a bad thing. And that's why you have to keep your thoughts to yourself, and I would say you have to keep your knowledge to yourself until you find the proper place to share it, find the right people for it, so like I said, my videos are for people that resonate with it. It's not for everyone, and that's okay. A lot of times people always want to seek acceptance, and they want everyone to like them. Everyone's not going to like you, regardless of where you are, where your state of mind is. But especially if you're a high frequency individual, you're going to encounter people that hate you. And I know in the very beginning, I used to wonder, right? Back when I used to ask the wrong questions of why don't they like me? What did I do? Is it because of this? Is it because of that? You might resort to, like I said, the more worldly way of thinking. And that is when we're wondering if it's discrimination. Like, is it because I'm too young? Is it because I'm a woman? Is it because I'm of a certain ethnic background? Or maybe they perceive me to be a different ethnic background that they may not like. Whatever the case is, and you might think it's those things. That's flesh, that's the outside. But then you come to the realization that they don't have a problem with people of your demographic. So now you're like, wait a minute, so they hate me, you know what I mean? And I'm thinking that it's because of my background on the, from what you see on the outside. But then you come to realize that they seem to get along just fine with people of the same background as you. So now you're like, wait a minute, so it's not that. Now what is it? And we're not, now that's the one question that led me to think it's spiritual. It has to be spiritual, because what else would it be? That's why some people, they leave your life. So as you elevate, they leave your life because they know that, especially if you're speaking that truth, they feel guilty. Part of them feels guilty. It's like they feel like they know exactly what you're talking about, but they hate the fact that they're associated with people that tried to set you up, people that didn't like you for no reason. And they know deep down that they were wrong for ostracizing you or for mistreating you the way they did. But the truth is that they did that because of what you are. It's because of what you represent and what is within you. So it's not the outside at all. It's the spirit within you. And then once you learn about who you are on a spiritual level, especially, and you could even add a little bit of ancestry, but again, ancestry, it's more spiritual based, because again, a person could share the same ethnic background as you, but guess what? They treat them, they treat them better than you, or they give you the short end of the stick, but they promote them because of what kind of values do they have? Well, the one thing that they like is they like people they can control. They like people that they can dominate with they like people that can be bought, basically, right? They basically sellouts. I mean, that's what they like. They like people that say yes to, all you gotta do is throw a little bit of money, and then they'll do whatever, no matter what, even if it goes against their values, even if it goes against righteousness, if it goes against the Most High. If you throw a little bit of money, they're gonna do it. And guess what? Now they're gonna have preferential treatment, because the world loves its own. The world loves people that it can buy, basically. And that's why, and another thing too, what makes you a high frequency individual is that you cannot be bought, because you stand firm on your values. You're not just saying you love God, and you actually live by it. Your life is a testament to true faith, no matter what trials come with that, because it's going to be a hard life if you decide to live in that way. If you decide to walk with integrity, you're going to be faced with challenges and resistance, because this world is directly opposed to doing things with integrity. At least in this broken society, the so-called divided states, the Most High can find a way for certain individuals to reach a certain level. That's true. But it's going to take a lot of time, and you have to be very patient with that process. But most people are not patient, so they take the so-called quote-unquote the fast route, and that comes with allowing your morals to be compromised. High-frequency individuals refuse to bow down to this system. That right there, you are a threat. You're a threat because you want to hold on to integrity, you know, and you have a real, not just a real faith in God, but you actually stand on it. You mean it. You live by it, you know, and that doesn't mean that you're perfect. It just means that you are, it's very hard to really move you in the direction where the so-called, you know, corrupt world wants you to be. And that's why they hate you and you get ostracized, of course, because they're hoping that by ostracizing you that you will break. You know, they're hoping that's going to push you to want to, you know, become one with them, to merge in with their ways. And you already know, you know, and you shouldn't have to compromise your morals or your integrity or your identity to be able to live in this so-called, to just live, period. You know, it's like they force you, they make you think that you have to force yourself to be like them, to be exactly identical to them, to like what they like, even if it means going against the Most High. Because you kind of are, in a way. I mean, if they make you do some things that you have no business doing just because you want a little bit more money, you want an increase in salary, you want this and that, that means that you have already placed money and material over God. You have already made money and material your God. And that's the breaking of the first commandment. Thou shalt not have any gods before me. Is it the first or the second? It's one of the commandments, but you know, that's one of the most important ones. Do not have any other gods before me. And what do we see? People place this world above all. People place worldly possessions and materialism above God because they are very much sucked into the matrix, that they have the inability to see beyond this dusty realm, because this realm is dusty. You know, they don't see the spiritual. They don't have the spiritual vision. When you talk like this, they're not going to get it. And of course they're going to ostracize you because you guys are on a whole nother frequency, a whole nother thing. And like I said, everything about this so-called broken society, they do so many things take place from the social engineering and all that. That's intended to keep you at a low vibration so that they can control you. All you are is just basically a modern day slave, a modern day, just a worker. They don't want thinkers. They want workers. And now they're replacing the workers with so-called AI. So now they don't, you can't even be that, you know? But they keep people at a low vibration, and then you come into the mold with all this energy, all this insight, all this amazingness, and you don't even have to say anything. Your presence, you know, alone triggers people because of the spirit that is inside you. And I love it. I love it. Because you got to think about who's rejecting you. I mean, I'm being rejected by those who abide by the systems of control. I am being rejected by people that don't live in truth. So therefore, I'm actually very glad that they are rejecting me, because that lets me know that I'm in the right path. You know what? This is a very interesting topic because there's so many different stories that I have. And I kind of just wanted to talk about the concept of what I think about this thing. But there's a lot of different stories. And I've kind of shared a little bit too before, you know, and I really appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for listening. Take care. And until next time.